The morning alarm rang across Kepler Station at exactly 0600 hours. The sound echoed through metal corridors that stretched for miles in every direction. This was no ordinary military base. This was the Galactic Defense Academy, where soldiers from 12 different worlds trained together for the first time in galactic history. Private Hana Kim opened her eyes in her small sleeping pod. Around her, other human recruits were waking up too. She could hear Jinho Park cursing quietly in Korean as he hit his head on the low ceiling. 2 beds over, Yoona Choi was already putting on her uniform with quick, practiced movements. Minho. Lee was still snoring despite the alarm. Hana sat up slowly and looked out the small window. Stars filled the black space around them. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, but it felt very far away now. She had been on Kepler Station for 2 weeks, and she still felt like an outsider. The human quarters were in Section C of the station. Section A belonged to the Krillians, tall lizard-like beings with 4 arms and thick, scaly skin. Section B housed the Zephyrians, insect creatures that looked like giant mantises but walked on 2 legs like humans. The Vorthak lived in Section D. They were made of living crystal and communicated through colored light patterns. All these different species were here for the same reason. The Void Hunters were coming back. These dark creatures had attacked the outer colonies 3 times in the past 5 years. Each attack was worse than the last. The Galactic Coalition had decided that only by working together could they stop this threat. Hana dressed quickly in her gray training uniform. The fabric felt strange against her skin. It was made from alien materials that could adapt to different body types and environmental conditions. The humans had been given special versions because their biology was different from the other species. She walked to the mess hall with the other human recruits. The corridor was wide enough for all species to move comfortably. Krillians needed extra space because of their 4 arms. Zephyrians had to duck slightly because of their height. The Vorthak made soft chiming sounds as they moved, their crystal bodies catching and reflecting the station lights. The mess hall was enormous. Different sections served different types of food. Humans ate in one corner, using familiar tables and chairs. The Krillians had raised platforms where they could rest their lower arms while eating. Zephyrians preferred to stand while consuming their liquid nutrients. The Vorthak absorbed energy directly from special charging stations. Hana took her protein paste and reconstituted vegetables to an empty table. She liked eating alone. It gave her time to think and observe. She watched the other species interact with each other. Some seemed comfortable with the mixing of different beings. Others stayed strictly with their own kind. Jinho. Park sat down, across from her without asking. He was older than most recruits, maybe 30 years old. He had served in the Korean Space Defense Force before volunteering for the integration program. "You always eat alone," Jinho said, opening his breakfast packet. "The aliens think we humans are unfriendly." Hana shrugged. "I do not care what they think." "You should care," Jinho said. "We represent our entire species here. If we fail, humans might not get another chance to join the galactic military." Yoona Choi and Minho Lee joined them at the table. Yoona was young, maybe 22, with bright eyes and an eager expression. She had studied alien languages and cultures at university before joining the program. Minho was quiet like Hana, but for different reasons. He seemed nervous around the alien species. "Did you hear about the new drill instructor?" Yoona asked excitedly. "They say he fought in the Battle of Rigel 7. He has killed more Void Hunters than any Krillian alive." "Great," Minho muttered. "Another alien who thinks humans are weak." Hana continued eating without comment. She had heard the stories about how other species viewed humans. Humans were small compared to Krillians. They were not as fast as Zephyrians. They could not communicate as efficiently as Vorthak. Most aliens wondered how humans had survived long enough to develop space travel. The breakfast period ended when a loud horn sounded 3 times. All recruits had to report to Training Base 7 for morning formation. Hana followed the crowd through the corridors, listening to the mix of different languages and communication methods around her. Training Bay 7 was a massive space that could hold 500 beings comfortably. The floor was made of a special material that could change texture and firmness for different training exercises. The ceiling was high enough that even the tallest Zephyrians could move freely. Recruits formed up in mixed species squads. Hana found herself standing between a young Zephyrian named Click Buzz Whistle. Humans could not pronounce Zephyrian names properly, and a Vorthak whose crystal body glowed with nervous green patterns. At the front of the formation stood the largest Krillian Hana had ever seen. He was at least 8 feet tall with 4 arms that looked like they could crush steel. His scales were dark green with silver patches that marked him as a veteran warrior. Scars covered his arms and face, telling stories of many battles. "I am Drill Sergeant Vextar," he announced in heavily accented galactic standard. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "For the next 6 weeks you belong to me. You will learn to fight as one unit, or you will die as separate species." The sergeant walked slowly along the formation lines. His 4 eyes moved constantly, examining each recruit. When he passed human recruits, he seemed to pause slightly longer, as if trying to understand what he was looking at. "The Void Hunters do not care what species you are," Vextar continued. "They consume all life equally. Your only chance of survival is to trust the being next to you, regardless of how many arms they have or what color they are." He stopped in front of Hana. His 4 eyes focused on her with uncomfortable intensity. She kept her gaze straight ahead, maintaining proper military bearing. "You," Sergeant Vextar said. "What is your combat experience?" "Sole defense, Drill Sergeant," Hana replied in a steady voice. "Sole defense," he repeated slowly. "I have heard of this battle. Humans fought well. Tell me, what did you do in sole defense?" Hana remained silent for several seconds. Around her, she could feel other recruits listening carefully. Finally, she spoke. "I served, Drill Sergeant." "Served how?" Vexitar pressed. "What was your role? What weapons did you use? How many enemies did you kill?" "I served as needed, Drill Sergeant." The sergeant's scales shifted color slightly, showing irritation. In Krillian culture, warriors were expected to boast about their achievements. Combat experience was a source of pride and honor. "That is not an answer," Vextar growled. "I want details. I want to know what kind of soldier you are." Hana met his gaze for the first time. Her dark eyes showed no fear, but also no pride. They were empty of emotion. "I am the kind of soldier who survived, Drill Sergeant." Vextar stared at her for a long moment. Around them, the formation was completely silent. Even the Zephyrians had stopped their constant clicking communication sounds. "We shall see," the drill sergeant said finally. "We shall see what kind of survivor you really are." He moved on to the next recruit, but Hana could feel his attention returning to her throughout the rest of the formation period. She had gained the interest of Drill Sergeant Vextar, and she was not sure if that was good or bad. As the formation dispersed for the first training exercise, Jinho caught up with her. "Why did you not tell him about Soul?" he asked quietly. "Every human knows that battle. You could have impressed him." Hana adjusted her equipment belt and checked her training weapon. "Some things should not be used to impress anyone," she said. She walked away toward the training area, leaving Jinho with more questions than answers. Behind her, she could hear other recruits speculating about her response. The alien recruit seemed confused by her reluctance to share war stories. Only Hana knew that some experiences were too dark to share casually. Some battles left marks that went deeper than scars on skin. Some victories came at prices that made them feel like defeats. The sole defense had been that kind of battle, and Drill Sergeant Vextar would learn soon enough what kind of soldier such battles created. 3 weeks had passed since the first formation meeting with Drill Sergeant Vexitar. Training had become harder every day. The mixed species squads were learning to work together, but it was not easy. Different species moved at different speeds, communicated in different ways, and had completely different ideas about military tactics. Hana Kim found herself assigned to Squad 7. Besides her, the squad included Jinho Park and 2 other humans, named Daeho Shin and Soman Kang. The alien members were a Krillian named Gorthak, a Zephyrian called Sharp Click Bright, and a Vorthak whose light patterns translated roughly to deep blue understanding. Every morning started with physical training. The obstacle courses were designed to challenge all species equally, which meant they were nearly impossible for everyone. Krillians had trouble with tight spaces because of their 4 arms. Zephyrians moved too fast and often crashed into barriers. Vorthak had difficulty with obstacles that required flexible movement. Humans had their own problems. They were smaller and weaker than most other species. But Hana noticed something interesting during these exercises. While other species struggled with obstacles designed for different body types, humans seemed to find ways around every challenge. They were good at adapting. This morning's exercise was different. Drill Sergeant Vextar had announced they would be doing weapons training. Each species brought their preferred weapons from their homeworld. Krillians used 4-armed plasma rifles that could fire in multiple directions. Zephyrians carried blade guns that combined shooting and slashing attacks. Vorthak used energy, weapons that fired beams of pure light. Humans used kinetic rifles, weapons that fired small metal projectiles at high speed. Most aliens thought these weapons were primitive compared to energy-based systems. The training ground was set up like a small city. Buildings, streets, and obstacles created a realistic combat environment. Targets would pop up randomly, and squads had to identify and eliminate threats while avoiding civilian targets. Squad 7 moved through the mock city carefully. Gorthak took point with his heavy armor and 4-armed rifle. Sharp Click Bright scouted ahead with fast, silent movements. The Vorthak provided communication between team members through light signals that all species could understand. Hana moved with Jinho and the other humans in the middle of the formation. She carried her rifle with casual ease, but her eyes were constantly moving. She watched windows, doorways, and corners with the kind of attention that came from real combat experience. The first targets appeared suddenly. Enemy shapes popped up from behind concrete barriers. The squad reacted quickly but not quite fast enough. Gorthak's 4-armed rifle was powerful, but slow to aim. Sharp Click Bright moved too fast and missed several shots. The Vorthak's light beam was accurate but took time to charge between shots. Hana's rifle made sharp cracking sounds as she fired. Each shot hit its target perfectly. Her movements were smooth and mechanical, like she had done this thousands of times before. In less than 10 seconds, she had eliminated 6 targets, while the rest of the squad was still getting into position. Impressive. Shooting, Jinho said as they moved to the next area. Hana did not respond. She was already scanning for the next threat. The exercise continued for 2 hours. Squad 7 moved through different scenarios: urban combat, building clearing, hostage, rescue, and civilian evacuation. In every situation, Hana's performance was perfect. She never missed a shot, never hesitated, and never made a tactical mistake. But there was something strange about the way she fought. Other soldiers showed emotion during combat training. They got excited, frustrated, or nervous. Hana showed nothing. Her face remained blank, her breathing stayed steady, and her hands never shook. After the exercise ended, Drill Sergeant Vextar called the squads together for review. He analyzed each team's performance, pointing out mistakes and suggesting improvements. When he got to Squad 7, he focused his attention on Hana. "Private Kim," he said, his 4 eyes fixed on her. "Your shooting was excellent. Your tactics were sound. Your reaction time was faster than most veterans I have trained." Hana stood at attention, looking straight ahead. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Vextar asked. "Training, Drill Sergeant." "What kind of training? Military school? Combat simulation? Live fire exercises?" "Yes, Drill Sergeant." Vextar's scales shifted to show frustration. "Yes, to which one?" "All of them, Drill Sergeant." The Drill Sergeant moved closer to her. His massive frame cast a shadow over her much smaller human form. "I have read your file, Private Kim. It says you served in the Soul Defense, but it gives no details about your role, your unit, or your specific duties. Why is that information classified?" Hana remained silent. "I am asking you a direct question, soldier," Vextar growled. "In Krillian military tradition, warriors share their battle experiences. It builds trust and unit cohesion. Why do you refuse to talk about your combat service? Because some experiences are not suitable for sharing, Drill Sergeant. Not suitable? Vextar's voice rose. Combat experience is always suitable for sharing among soldiers, unless— He paused, his eyes narrowing. Unless you have something to hide. Did you desert? Did you fail in your duty? Did you run from battle? The other recruits watched this confrontation with growing tension. The alien species did not understand why this was such a big issue, but they could sense the anger building in their drill sergeant. Jinho Park stepped forward slightly. Drill Sergeant, if I may— You may not. Vextar snapped without looking away from Hana. I am speaking to Private Kim. He leaned down so his face was closer to hers. I want to know what kind of soldier you are. The lives of your squad mates may depend on you. They have a right to know if you can be trusted. Hana met his gaze directly for the first time during the confrontation. Her dark eyes showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all. I can be trusted to do what needs to be done, Drill Sergeant. That is not an answer, Vextar said. That is an evasion. Around them, other squads had stopped their own exercises to watch. Word was spreading through the training area that the human private was being confronted by the drill sergeant. Alien. Recruits gathered in small groups, whispering or clicking or flashing lights in their various communication methods. Hana became aware that she was the center of attention for the entire training company. Hundreds of eyes from different species were watching her. She could feel the weight of their curiosity and judgment. The Soul Defense lasted 3 years, she said quietly. Many people died. Many people lived. I was one of the ones who lived. How did you live? Vextar pressed. What did you do during those 3 years? I served. Doing what? Whatever was necessary. Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. His scales had turned a dark red color that indicated extreme frustration in Krillian biology. Private Kim, you are testing my patience. I have been training soldiers for 15 years. I have never had a recruit who refused to discuss their combat experience. It makes me suspicious. It makes me wonder if you are hiding cowardice or incompetence. The training ground became completely silent. Even the constant background hum of the station's life support system seemed to fade away. Every being present was focused on this moment. Hana looked around at all the faces watching her. Human faces, Krillian faces, Zephyrian compound eyes, and Vorthak crystal formations that served as sensory organs. They all wanted to know her story. They all wanted to understand what kind of soldier she was. She turned back to Drill Sergeant Vextar. I am not a coward, Drill Sergeant, and I am not incompetent. Then prove it, he challenged. Tell me about— Soul, tell me about your service. Tell me something that shows me what kind of warrior you are. Hana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silence, everyone could hear her clearly. Some wars are not about being a warrior, Drill Sergeant. Some wars are about being willing to become something else, something that can survive when warriors cannot. What does that mean? Vextar demanded. It means I survived Soul Defense, because I was willing to pay the price of survival. What price? Hana looked at him with eyes that seemed much older than her young face. That is not suitable for sharing, Drill Sergeant. Vexitar stared at her for several more seconds. Then he straightened up to his full height and addressed the entire formation. Training resumes in 1 hour, he announced. Next exercise will be urban combat with live ammunition. Dismissed. As the recruits dispersed, Jinho caught up with Hana. What did you mean about paying the price of survival? Hana adjusted her equipment and started walking toward the preparation area. Some questions should not be asked, Jinho. But we are supposed to trust each other, he said. How can I trust someone who will not tell me anything about their past? Hana stopped walking and looked at him. You can trust me to keep you alive. That should be enough. She walked away, leaving Jinho with even more questions. Behind her, she could hear other recruits discussing her strange answers and mysterious past. The alien species were particularly confused by her behavior. But Hana knew that some truths were too heavy to share. Some experiences changed a person so completely that talking about them would only spread the damage to others. The soul defense had been that kind of experience. And if Drill Sergeant Vexitar kept pushing for answers, the combat psychology evaluation was scheduled for week 5 of training. All recruits had to pass this test to continue in the integration program. The test was designed to see how different species handled extreme stress and life-threatening situations. Dr. Minji Yoon, the human psychologist assigned to the program, had been studying the results from previous tests. The alien species showed predictable stress responses. Krillians became more aggressive under pressure. Zephyrians moved faster but made more mistakes. Vorthak became dimmer and communicated less clearly. Humans were different. Their stress responses varied greatly from individual to individual. Some broke down completely. Others seemed to thrive under pressure. A few showed responses that the alien psychologists could not understand or classify. The test took place in a simulation chamber that could create realistic combat scenarios. Each recruit faced the same basic situation. They were trapped in a building with injured civilians while enemy forces closed in from all sides. They had limited ammunition, no backup, and had to make impossible choices about who to save and who to sacrifice. Hana Kim entered the simulation chamber at 1400 hours. Dr. Yoon watched from the observation deck along with Drill Sergeant Vexitar and several alien medical officers. The chamber filled with holographic projections that created a perfect illusion of a war-torn city. The scenario began immediately. Hana found herself in a damaged hospital with 20 injured civilians. Some were children, some were elderly. All needed immediate medical attention. Outside, she could hear the sounds of approaching enemy forces. Through her earpiece, she received frantic radio calls from other units requesting help. Explosions shook the building. The lights flickered and went out, leaving only emergency lighting. The civilians began to panic. Dr. Yoon expected Hana to show some kind of stress response: elevated heart rate, faster breathing, sweating, or shaking hands. The monitoring equipment showed something completely different. Hana's heart rate actually decreased. Her breathing became slower and more controlled. Her brain activity changed in ways the human doctor had never seen before. It was as if her mind had shifted into a completely different mode of operation. In the simulation, Hana moved through the hospital with mechanical precision. She sorted the civilians by injury severity without showing any emotion. She made calculations about ammunition, escape routes, and enemy positions like a computer processing data. When enemy forces entered the building, her response was swift and lethal. She eliminated threats with minimal ammunition, used the environment to her advantage, and protected the civilians with tactical skills that impressed even Drill Sergeant Vex, tar. But something was wrong. Dr. Yoon could see it in the brain scans. Large portions of Hana's emotional centers had shut down completely. She was functioning on pure tactical instinct and survival programming. The test scenario escalated. More enemies appeared. The building began to collapse. Hana had to choose which civilians to save and which to leave behind. These were the kinds of moral choices that broke most recruits emotionally. Hana made the choices without hesitation. She selected the civilians with the best chance of survival and began moving them toward an exit route she had identified. Her face showed no emotion as she left others behind. She completed the evacuation successfully, saving 12 of the 20 civilians. By military standards, this was an excellent result. Most recruits saved fewer than 8. But Dr. Yoon was disturbed by what she had observed. When the simulation ended, Hana stood in the empty chamber looking confused. The medical monitors showed her brain activity slowly returning to normal patterns. She blinked several times as if waking up from sleep. "How do you feel?" Dr. Yoon asked through the intercom. "Fine," Hana replied. "When does the test start?" "Doctor." Yoon exchanged glances with the other observers. "The test is over, Hana. You completed it." "I did?" Hana looked around the empty chamber. "I do not remember doing any test." This was unprecedented. No recruit had ever experienced complete memory loss during the simulation. Dr. Yoon made notes about dissociative episodes and trauma responses that went far beyond anything in her textbooks. That evening, word of Hana's strange test results spread through the recruit quarters. Some said she had achieved the highest score ever recorded. Others whispered that she had shown signs of psychological instability. Jinho Park confronted her in the mess hall. People are saying you do not remember the test at all. Is that true? Hana stared at her food tray. I remember entering the chamber. Then I remember Dr. Yoon asking me how I felt. Nothing in between. That is not normal, Hana, Jinho said. Maybe you should talk to the doctors about what happened during Seoul defense. Maybe they can help you. I do not need help, Hana said quietly. You blocked out an entire hour of your life, Jinho insisted. That is not healthy. That is not normal. Other human recruits had gathered around their table. Yuna Choi looked worried. Hana, we all know Seoul defense was bad. Everyone on Earth heard stories about that battle. But keeping everything inside is hurting you. And it is hurting the rest of us too, added Daeho Shin. The aliens already think humans are unstable. Your behavior makes all humans look bad. Hana stood up from the table. I am going to sleep. Running away will not solve anything, Jinho called after her. But Hana was already walking toward the exit. She did not want to discuss Seoul defense. She did not want to remember the things that had happened there. Some memories were buried. For good reasons. The next morning brought the final confrontation she had been dreading. Drill Sergeant Vextar called a full company formation in the main training bay. All 500 recruits stood in perfect rows while he paced back and forth in front of them. Yesterday's psychological evaluations revealed some interesting results, he announced. Most of you performed as expected. Some exceeded expectations. A few showed responses that concern our medical staff. His 4 eyes found Hana in the formation. Private Kim front and center. Hana's heart sank. She marched forward and stood at attention in front of the entire company. 500 beings from 4 different species watched her with curiosity and judgment. Private Kim achieved the highest tactical score in the history of this evaluation, Vextar announced. She also showed psychological responses that our doctors cannot explain or classify. He began walking in a circle around her. This makes me wonder about her fitness for duty. A soldier who cannot remember her own actions in combat is a liability to her unit. A soldier who refuses to discuss her past experiences cannot be trusted. The formation was completely silent. Even the constant background noise of the station seemed to fade away. I have tried to be patient, Vextar continued. I have tried to respect human privacy customs. But patience has limits. Trust has requirements. He stopped directly in front of her. Private Kim, I am giving you one final opportunity to explain your background and your psychological condition. If you refuse, I will recommend your removal from this program. Hana stared straight ahead. Around her, she could feel the weight of 500 pairs of eyes. Human eyes that wanted her to represent their species well. Alien eyes that were curious about human psychology and warfare. The records say you served in Seoul defense, Vextar pressed. A battle that lasted 3 years. A battle where humans fought against impossible odds and somehow survived. I want to know what you did during those 3 years. I want to know what kind of experiences created the soldier standing before me. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Hana could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She could feel sweat forming on her palms despite the cool air of the training bay. Finally, she made a decision that would change everything. You want to know about Seoul defense? She said, quietly. Yes, Vextar replied. You want to know what kind of soldier I am? Yes. Hana looked around at all the faces watching her. Human faces filled with hope and worry. Alien faces filled with curiosity and suspicion, all of them waiting for her to speak. You want to understand what happened to me during those 3 years? Yes. Vextar said for the 3rd time. Hana reached for the fasteners on her uniform jacket. Then I will show you. She began to remove her jacket, revealing what lay beneath. The formation held its breath as she prepared to expose the truth that she had kept hidden since arriving at the academy. Some truths could only be shown, not spoken. Some experiences left marks that words could never adequately describe. And some prices of survival were written on the body itself, in scars that told stories more terrible than any verbal account could convey. Hana Kim's uniform jacket fell to the floor of the training bay. The 500 beings gathered in formation fell completely silent. What they saw made several of the alien medical officers step forward in shock. Her arms, shoulders, and back were covered in scars. But these were not ordinary battle wounds. These scars formed patterns that told a story of survival beyond anything the alien species had ever encountered. Dr. Kale Sung, the chief human medical officer, pushed through the crowd of observers. His face went pale as he recognized what he was seeing. These were not random war injuries. They were the systematic marks of emergency medical procedures performed under the worst possible conditions. "My God," Dr. Sung whispered. "These are life support integration points." Drill Sergeant Vextar looked confused. "What does that mean?" Dr. Sung pointed to lines of small circular scars along Hana's spine. "These are neural interface ports. They connect directly to the spinal cord for emergency life support." He indicated larger scars on her shoulders and chest. "These are surgical access points for mechanical organ replacement." The alien medical officers moved closer to examine the markings. They had never seen anything like this in their own species. The Krillian doctor, a female named Zathara, ran her scanning device over Hana's back. "These scars show evidence of repeated surgical procedures," she announced. "Some of these wounds were reopened and closed multiple times." Dr. Sung nodded grimly. "During Seoul defense, our medical technology advanced 300 years in 3 years. We had to. We were losing soldiers faster than we could replace them." Hana stood perfectly still as the doctors examined her. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were trembling slightly. She had never exposed these marks to anyone before. "Explain what these procedures were," Drill Sergeant Vextar demanded. Dr. Sung looked uncomfortable. "During Seoul defense, we developed emergency cybernetic life support systems. When a soldier was too badly wounded to survive naturally, but too valuable to lose, we would—" He paused, struggling with the words. "We would keep them alive through mechanical means and send them back into combat." The formation of recruits began to murmur among themselves. The concept was difficult for most species to understand. When Krillian warriors fell in battle, they stayed fallen. When Zephyrians died, their bodies were honored and buried. The idea of bringing soldiers back from death was foreign and disturbing. "Show me," Vextar said quietly. Hana turned around slowly. Her back was covered in even more scars than her front. Long surgical lines ran from her neck to her lower spine. Small circular marks dotted her ribs where mechanical breathing apparatus had been connected. "These are the marks of 17 separate revival procedures," Dr. Sung said, his voice barely above a whisper. 17 times this soldier was clinically dead and brought back to continue fighting. The alien doctors began talking among themselves in their various languages. The Zephyrians clicked rapidly in what sounded like distress. The Vorthak flashed confused patterns of light. The Krillians made low growling sounds that indicated deep discomfort. Hana finally spoke, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "I was 14 when Seoul defense began. The Void Hunters had surrounded Earth completely. There was no retreat, there was no surrender. There was only fighting until everyone was dead or the enemy was defeated." She put her uniform jacket back on but did not fasten it closed. The scars remained visible to everyone in the formation. "I died for the first time during the 3rd month of the siege," she continued. "A Void Hunter plasma blast caught me in the chest. The medics said I was gone for 4 minutes before they got me back." Dr. Sung provided context for the alien observers. "Human children adapt to cybernetic integration better than adults. Their nervous systems are more flexible. During Seoul defense, we had no choice but to use soldiers as young as 12 years old." "You sent children into combat," Vextar said. It was not a question. It was a statement of disbelief. "We sent everyone into combat," Hana replied. "Children, elderly, sick, wounded. Everyone who could hold a weapon or operate equipment. The Void Hunters did not care about age or civilian status. They consumed everyone equally. She walked closer to the drill sergeant. Despite the size difference between them, she seemed to grow larger as she spoke. "You asked what kind of soldier I am," she said. "I am the kind of soldier who died 17 times and kept fighting. I am the kind of soldier who learned to disconnect her mind from her body so that pain and fear could not stop her from completing missions," Dr. Sung added quietly. "The psychological conditioning required for multiple revival procedures is extreme. Soldiers learn to compartmentalize their consciousness to survive the trauma of repeated death and resurrection." This explained Hana's behavior during the psychological evaluation. Her mind had learned to shut down emotional responses and operate on pure survival instinct. It was not a malfunction. It was an adaptation. Yuna Choi stepped forward from the human section of the formation. "Hana, why did you not tell us? We could have helped you." Hana looked at her with empty eyes. "Helped me what? Forget? Pretend it did not happen? Accept that I am no longer fully human." The words hit the formation like a physical blow. The other human recruits looked shocked. They had not understood how different Hana's war experience was from their own. Jinho Park spoke. "Up. You are still human. What you went through does not change that." "Does it not?" Hana asked. "How much of a person can you replace with machines before they stop being that person? How many times can you die and come back before you lose something essential?" She turned to address the entire formation. "You want to know about human warfare? This is human warfare. We do not stop fighting when we are wounded. We do not stop fighting when we are dying. We do not stop fighting when we are dead." The alien recruits listened with growing horror and fascination. Their species had never encountered anything like this in their military histories. During the final year of Seoul defense, 60% of human soldiers were operating with some form of cybernetic life support, Dr. Sung explained. "We developed techniques for field resurrection that allowed soldiers to return to combat within hours of clinical death." Drill Sergeant Vextar was struggling to process this information. "Your species fights wars by refusing to die? Our species fights wars by doing whatever is necessary to protect our people," Hana corrected. "Death is just another obstacle to overcome." She began fastening her uniform jacket, covering the scars once again. "You wanted to know if you could trust me. Now you know what kind of soldier I am. I am the kind who will not stop fighting no matter what happens to me. I am the kind who will complete the mission even if it kills me. I am the kind who will come back from death itself to protect my squad mates." The formation remained silent as they absorbed this revelation. The alien species were trying to understand warfare conducted beyond the boundaries of life and death. The human recruits were learning that their own experiences of conflict were nothing compared to what some of their species had endured. "The Seoul defense ended when we finally developed weapons capable of destroying the Void Hunter motherships," Dr. Sung said. "But the cost was enormous. An entire generation of humans grew up learning that survival required sacrificing everything, including their humanity." Hana looked directly at Drill Sergeant Vexitar. "You asked if I could be trusted. You asked what kind of soldier I am. Now you know. I am the kind of soldier created by a war where surrender meant extinction. I am the kind of soldier who learned that some prices are worth paying to protect others." She stood at attention, waiting for his response. Around her, 500 beings from 4 different species struggled to understand what they had just learned about human warfare. The marks on her body told a story more powerful than any words could convey. They were proof that humans would go to any length, pay any price, and sacrifice any part of themselves to ensure their species survived. For the first time since meeting her, Drill Sergeant Vextar understood that he was not looking at a broken soldier. He was looking at something new, something created by necessity and forged in the fires of absolute war. Something that represented humanity's greatest strength and perhaps its greatest danger. The next morning, Drill Sergeant Vexitar requested a private meeting with Hana Kim. They met in his office, a small space decorated with Krillian battle trophies and honor weapons. Vexitar looked uncomfortable as he gestured for her to sit. I owe you an apology, he said. In my culture, we believe that warriors who die in battle should stay dead. Death is the end of service. The idea of returning to fight after death is... He struggled to find the right words. It disturbs us deeply. Hana sat straight in her chair. I understand. Most species find human warfare methods disturbing. Tell me about the others, Vextar said. Are you the only human with this kind of experience? No, Hana replied. All of us carry marks from our wars. We just hide them better than I do. That afternoon, Vextar called the human recruits together for a private meeting. In the safety of a closed room, away from alien observation, he asked them to share their real experiences. Jinho Park was the first to speak. He rolled up his sleeves to reveal thin surgical scars along his arms. Neural enhancement for psychic warfare defense, he explained. The Void Hunters used mental attacks that could drive soldiers insane. We had to modify our brains to resist them. Yuna Choi showed marks on her neck where neural interfaces had been implanted. Communications enhancement, she said. I was part of a group mind network that coordinated planetary defense systems. 20 minds linked together, thinking as one. Minho Lee revealed extensive scarring on his torso. Chemical warfare adaptation, he said quietly. The Void Hunters used toxic atmospheres to kill entire cities. I was modified to survive in poisonous environments and rescue civilians. Daeho Shin had the least visible modifications, but when he removed his shirt, Vextar could see small ports along his spine. Reaction time enhancement, he explained. My nervous system was accelerated to pilot fighters against Void Hunter ships. I experience time differently than normal humans now. Somin Kang showed surgical marks on her hands and arms. Precision enhancement for bomb disposal, she said. My hands were modified with microservos for steady movement. I disarmed Void Hunter biological weapons for 3 years. Dr. Kel Sung joined the meeting to provide medical context. What you are seeing is the result of the most desperate war in human history, he told Vextar. We modified our own biology because the alternative was extinction. Vextar listened with growing amazement and horror. Your entire species was willing to change itself to survive? Not the entire species, Dr. Sung corrected. Most humans lived in protected cities and never saw combat. But those who fought, he paused, they paid prices that no other species has ever been willing to pay. How many? Vextar asked. How many what? How many humans underwent these modifications? Dr. Sung was quiet for a moment. During Seoul defense alone, approximately 2 million soldiers received some form of combat enhancement. Across all human conflicts with the Void Hunters, the number reaches 20 million. The scale was staggering. Vextar tried to imagine 20 million Krillians willingly undergoing surgical modification for warfare. It was impossible. His species valued their natural forms too highly. Why? He asked. Why were humans willing to sacrifice so much? Hana answered. Because we understood something that other species did not. The Void Hunters were not just trying to conquer us. They were trying to erase us completely. Every human who died fed their growth. Surrender was not possible. Retreat was not possible. Only victory or extinction. Dr. Sung pulled up medical files on his datapad. The psychological profiles of enhanced soldiers show common patterns: extreme determination, willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for mission success. Reduced fear responses, enhanced focus under stress. And the costs? Vextar asked. Difficulty with emotional connections, problems relating to unmodified humans. In some cases, complete inability to function in peacetime society. Vextar looked at each of the human soldiers. Is that why you volunteered for this program? Because you cannot live normal lives? Partly, Jinho admitted. Modified soldiers like us do not fit well in peaceful society. We are too different now. But also because we are good at what we do, Hana added. We know how to fight wars that cannot be lost. We know how to pay prices that ensure victory. That evening, Vextar met with the other alien instructors to share what he had learned. The meeting included representatives from all 4 species in the integration program. "This changes everything we know about human military capabilities," said Commander Zathara, the Krillian medical officer. "They are not just willing to die for their cause. They are willing to become something else entirely. It explains their behavior during training," noted Instructor Sharpblade Quick, a senior Zephyrian. "They adapt to impossible situations because they have already adapted themselves beyond normal biological limits." The Vorthak representative, whose name translated as "deep understanding of patterns," flashed concern through light patterns. "This makes humans either the most valuable allies or the most dangerous unknowns in galactic warfare." Vexitar shared their concerns. "If humans are willing to modify themselves this extensively for war, what else might they be willing to do? What limits do they actually have?" The questions led to a complete restructuring of the integration program. New protocols were developed specifically for human psychology and capabilities. The training scenarios were adjusted to account for soldiers who could function beyond normal biological limits. Special counseling programs were established for human recruits dealing with combat modifications. Dr. Sung worked with alien psychologists to develop treatments for enhancement-related trauma. But the most important change was in attitude. The alien species stopped viewing humans as primitive or weak. Instead, they began to see them as a species that had chosen to pay ultimate prices for survival. During the next training exercise, Squad 7 faced a scenario that would have been impossible for normal soldiers. They had to rescue hostages from a burning building while under heavy enemy fire. The alien members of the squad expected to fail. Instead, they watched Hana coordinate a perfect rescue operation. She moved through smoke and flames with mechanical precision. She calculated risks and made tactical decisions with computer-like accuracy. She saved every hostage without losing a single squad member. Afterward, Gorthak the Krillian asked her, "How did you know we would succeed?" "I did not know," Hana replied. "But I knew we would not stop trying until either we succeeded or we were all dead." "That is the difference," Gorthak said quietly. "Other species fight until victory becomes impossible. Humans fight until they become something that makes victory possible." The comment spread throughout the alien recruit populations. It became their new understanding of human warfare philosophy. Humans did not just use tools and tactics to win wars. They modified themselves to become living weapons designed for specific conflicts. This realization created both respect and unease among the galactic species. Respect for human determination and effectiveness. Unease about what humans might become if they faced another extinction-level threat. As the integration program continued, it became clear that the aliens were not just learning to fight alongside humans. They were learning to understand a completely different philosophy of survival and warfare. A philosophy that said no price was too high, no modification too extreme, and no sacrifice too great if it meant protecting their people from extinction. 6 months after the integration program ended, the first mixed species units deployed to the Centauri colonies. Intelligence reports showed a massive Void Hunter fleet moving toward the Outer Rim settlements. This would be the first real test of cross-species military cooperation. Specialist Hana Kim now wore the insignia of a tactical advisor. Her official role was to help alien commanders understand human combat capabilities. Her real job was to provide options when conventional warfare failed. The evacuation of Centauri Prime should have been simple. 12 transport ships would land, load civilian populations, and jump to safety before the Void Hunter fleet arrived. The operation had a comfortable safety margin of 6 hours. Everything went wrong in the first 30 minutes. Void Hunter scout ships arrived early and destroyed half the transport fleet before they could land. The remaining ships were damaged and could only carry half the planned passenger load. 30,000 civilians were stranded on the planet with no way to escape. Commander Vexistar, now promoted and leading the Mixed Species Rescue Force, faced an impossible choice. Standard military doctrine was clear: retreat to prevent further losses. Save who you can and accept that the rest will die. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Sharpclick Bright, "Void Hunter main fleet will arrive in 4 hours. We must evacuate remaining transports now or lose them too." The alien officers agreed. It was a terrible loss, but strategically sound. Saving half the civilians was better than saving none. Hana Kim stepped forward. Commander, there is another option. Vexitar looked at her with tired eyes. What option, Specialist? We could implement emergency field enhancement protocols for volunteer soldiers. Buy additional time for civilian evacuation. The alien officers looked confused. Dr. Sung, who had been monitoring communications, went pale. Hana, he said quietly, field enhancement protocols were banned after Seoul defense. They have a 90% casualty rate. 90% casualty rate among normal soldiers, Hana corrected. Modified soldiers have different survival chances. Commander Vexitar studied the tactical display. Explain this option. Hana activated a holographic projection showing the planet's defense grid. We have 15 human soldiers in this unit who can undergo emergency cybernetic enhancement. With proper modifications, they can operate beyond normal biological limits for extended periods. What does that mean? Asked Major Zathara. The Krillian medical officer. Dr. Sung answered reluctantly. It means temporarily killing the soldiers and replacing their life functions with machines. They become living weapons that can fight without regard for pain, fear, or self-preservation. The alien officers reacted with visible distress. The idea concept violated every military tradition they knew. How long could such soldiers operate? Vexitar asked. Long enough, Hana replied. Modified soldiers can fight for days without rest, food, or sleep. They can survive injuries that would kill normal beings. They can hold defensive positions that should be impossible to defend. She highlighted positions around the civilian evacuation zones. 15 enhanced soldiers could hold these choke points long enough for emergency evacuation procedures. We could save everyone. At what cost? Vexitar demanded. Some of the volunteers will not survive the enhancement process, Hana admitted. Others will die during the fighting. Those who survive will require extensive medical treatment afterward. How extensive? Dr. Sung pulled up medical projections. Months of surgery to remove temporary implants. Psychological rehabilitation to reintegrate normal emotional responses. Some volunteers may never fully recover. The command center fell silent. The alien officers struggled with the moral implications of deliberately harming their own soldiers to save civilians. I volunteer, Hana said quietly. Absolutely not. Vexitar replied immediately. I will not authorize the deliberate modification of my soldiers. Then 30,000 people die, Hana said, and when word spreads that we abandoned them, other colonies will lose faith in galactic protection. The political consequences will be enormous. Lieutenant Jinho Park stepped forward. I volunteer too. As do I, added Corporal Yuna Choi. Within minutes, 12 more human soldiers had volunteered for the enhancement procedure. They stood in a line, faces calm, prepared to undergo temporary death for the sake of strangers. Commander Vexitar looked at these volunteers with amazement and horror. No Krillian would make such a choice. No Zephyrian would risk their individual existence for unknown civilians. No Vorthak would willingly disconnect from their crystal matrix. But humans were different. They had learned during their own extinction war that individual survival meant nothing if their species died. Doctor, Vexitar said slowly, what do you need to perform these procedures? Dr. Sung was quiet for a long moment. Portable surgical equipment, cybernetic life support modules, and about 2 hours to prepare temporary modifications. Do it. The next 2 hours were the longest of Vexitar's military career. He watched human medical teams prepare their own soldiers for voluntary death and resurrection. The alien medical officers assisted despite their moral discomfort. One by one, the volunteers underwent the enhancement procedure. Their hearts stopped. Their brain activity ceased. Machines took over their life functions while cybernetic implants were connected to their nervous systems. Then they were brought back. But they were no longer quite the same beings who had volunteered. Enhanced. Soldiers moved differently. They spoke in monotone voices. Their eyes showed no fear, no doubt, no emotion beyond cold calculation. They had become living weapons designed for one purpose: buying time for civilian evacuation. The Void Hunter fleet arrived ahead of schedule. The enhanced soldiers took their positions around the evacuation zones and prepared for the impossible. Defense. What followed was 4 hours of the most intense urban combat anyone had ever witnessed. 15 enhanced humans held defensive positions against thousands of Void Hunter warriors. They fought without sleep, without food, without regard for wounds that would have stopped normal soldiers. They died and were resurrected by their field, medical equipment. They lost limbs and continued fighting. They suffered injuries that should have been fatal and kept completing their missions. The alien forces watched in amazed horror as human soldiers demonstrated what their species was capable of when pushed beyond all normal limits. It was warfare conducted at a level that no other species had ever imagined possible. All 30,000 civilians were evacuated successfully. The last transport ship jumped to safety, just as Void Hunter reinforcements overwhelmed the final defensive positions. 8 of the 15 enhanced soldiers survived. They were rushed to medical facilities where teams of doctors worked for days to remove temporary implants and restore normal biological functions. 3 months later, Commander Vextar visited Hana Kim in the military hospital. She was awake, but still recovering from the procedures needed to remove her combat enhancements. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like myself again," she replied. "The enhancements disconnect you from who you are. You become something else, something designed only for war." "Do you regret volunteering?" Hana looked out the hospital window at stars that contained colonies full of people who were alive because of choices made by human soldiers. "Every species in the galaxy has evolved different survival advantages," she said. "Some have superior technology, some have natural weapons or armor, some have powerful unified cultures." She turned back to Vextar. "Humans have something different. We have the ability to become whatever we need to become to protect our people. We can pay prices that other species cannot imagine. Is that good or bad?" "It is what it is," Hana replied. "Those 30,000 civilians are alive because humans were willing to die temporarily to save them. Their children will grow up free because we were willing to sacrifice pieces of ourselves." Vextar nodded slowly. The integration program was supposed to teach different species to fight together. Instead, it taught us what humans are willing to become for victory. "And what did you learn?" Vextar was quiet for a moment. "I learned that humans are either the most valuable allies in the galaxy or the most dangerous unknowns. Maybe both." "Are you afraid of us?" "Sometimes," Vextar admitted. "Your species fights wars by different rules. Rules that say nothing is too sacred to sacrifice if it means protecting your people." Hana smiled for the first time since her enhancement procedures. "Good. Fear keeps allies honest, and enemies should definitely be afraid of what humans will do to protect the innocent." 6 months later, the mixed species units received new deployment orders. The war against the Void Hunters was expanding. More colonies needed protection. More impossible battles needed to be fought. As the ships prepared for departure, Vexitar watched human soldiers preparing their equipment. They moved with quiet efficiency, checking weapons and medical supplies. Some bore visible scars from previous enhancements. Others showed the subtle signs of ongoing modifications. They were no longer just human soldiers. They had become something new, something created by necessity and forged in the furnace of absolute war. Something that represented humanity's greatest strength and perhaps its most terrifying capability. The final image stayed with Vextar as the fleet jumped to hyperspace. Hana Kim stood with her squad, checking her equipment one last time before deployment. Her uniform